The film kicks off in Baghdad, Iraq, with a high-stakes rescue mission. A top-tier private security force led by the seasoned and sharp-witted commander Dragon Luo Feng was airdropped into a war-torn oil refinery. Their objective was to evacuate civilians who were trapped inside after a brutal mercenary attack. The refinery, operated by a company called Unicorp, was in total chaos, with fire and smoke hanging in the air. Upon arrival, Luo was greeted by the head of the refinery, Professor Chang, who escorted him to the location where the civilians were waiting to be airlifted to safety. Meanwhile, not far from the action, we find our other main character, Chris Van Horn, a brawny former U.S. Marine turned mercenary who was out on a desolate patch of land playing golf. This wasn't your average Sunday on the green. Chris was a man at a crossroads. He was trying to leave his past life behind. His brother Henry, who was still a mercenary, rolled up to deliver Chris's cut from their last gig. But his real reason for being there was to offer Chris a new mission, a kidnapping job with a massive payday, enough to set them up for a long time. However, Chris had a new purpose in life, and he refused the offer flat, a man of his word. He told Henry he was more interested in caring for the orphans he had been looking after in a small, dusty village. Henry, however, wouldn't take no for an answer. He laid it all out for Chris, telling him that this job's payout was a king's ransom, a mountain of cash that could be used to help the village and all its inhabitants. Henry also got personal, pointing out that Chris had changed drastically since their father's death 2 years ago, choosing a quiet life over the high-stakes world of private contracting. Later, we see Chris genuinely enjoying his new life, a smile on his face as he played with the kids. He was a completely different man from the hardened Marine. They were watched by Soraya, the kind and gentle orphanage manager. A little while later, Chris's old friend Owen Paddock pulled up in a truck. He was a well digger who had come to fix the village's only source of water. But after a quick look, Owen delivered the bad news. The pump was a lost cause and needed to be replaced. The new one would cost a staggering $100,000. Owen promised to do his best to get the money. Later that night, as Soraya talked to Chris about their grim situation, Chris began to seriously reconsider Henry's offer. The weight of his responsibilities to the orphans was a heavy burden to bear, and he couldn't stop thinking about the massive sum of money Henry's mission offered. He was at a major crossroads, and his moral compass was spinning in circles. The very next day, a high-stakes evacuation operation got underway at the oil refinery.
Come on, come on.
Luo was at the helm, leading a convoy of 11 buses packed to the gills with civilians. His daughter, May, an engineer at the plant, was riding in his truck. Their conversation was anything but easy. May was at her wit's end, and she let Luo have it. She was sick of him putting his job and his country before his own family, a choice that had left her feeling abandoned. Luo, a man of few words, couldn't quite express how much he truly cared for her, but he simply had to focus on the task at hand. Their journey was a minefield, literally. They had to navigate a death road, a treacherous stretch of land littered with abandoned vehicles and hidden landmines. Just when they thought things couldn't get any worse, a freak sandstorm suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The weather forecast had predicted clear skies, so this was a huge red flag. With no other way around, Luo made the tough call to push through the storm. As they plunged into the swirling dust and sand, their radios went dead. All communications were down, and the team was flying blind. That's when May, with a sharp eye, caught sight of some off-road vehicles lurking in the blinding sand. It was Chris and Henry's mercenary crew, and they were on the warpath. Without a moment to spare, Chris's team went in for the ambush, ruthlessly sabotaging 2 of the buses at the rear of the convoy. A vicious, no-holds-barred fight broke out between Chris's mercenaries and Luo's guards. The mercenaries were merciless and took down every guard in their path, but not without some resistance. After a hard-fought battle, Chris's crew made a clean getaway with the 2 hijacked buses. It didn't take long for Luo to realize he had been played. As his convoy cleared the sandstorm, one of his men called out, reporting that 2 buses were missing. That was all Luo needed to hear. He knew in his gut that the sandstorm wasn't a freak accident, but a carefully orchestrated diversion to hijack his mission right under his nose. He was on the warpath, and he wasn't about to sit by and let these criminals get away with it. Meanwhile, Chris and Henry were on the move, transferring their hostages to their vehicle. As they drove, Chris had a gut feeling that something was wrong. The people they had kidnapped didn't look like ruthless arms dealers. They looked like regular people. Chris's moral compass was spinning in circles, and a new wave of doubt crept in. He knew in his heart that he was a man of honor, and this job felt shady. Back at the oil rig, Luo decided to take matters into his own hands and went after the missing buses in a helicopter. He asked his daughter, May, to join him, promising to protect her no matter what. May, who was still at her wits' end, reluctantly agreed. During their search, they stumbled upon the source of the sandstorm, a massive jet engine that had been repurposed to create the illusion of a natural disaster. It was a jaw-dropping discovery. Just then, a helicopter carrying one of Luo's snipers intercepted Chris and Henry. A high-stakes, all-out gunfight broke out in the middle of the desert. Chris, a man with a heavy hand, grabbed a weapon and started firing blindly. His wild shots hit their mark, sending the chopper spiraling out of control and crashing to the ground. In the aftermath, Luo and May discovered one of the abandoned buses and found a few surviving passengers. One of them told Luo that 5 of their people had been kidnapped. It was a bitter pill to swallow for Luo, who swore to himself that he would not rest until he had found every single one of them. Back on the road, Henry took Chris to the main hideout to meet the man who had hired them for the mission. Chris was completely blindsided when he saw his old friend Owen, the well repairman. As it turned out, one of their hostages was Professor Chang, the man with the key to getting the oil to the ships. Chris had a gut feeling that something was wrong, and he was about to get to the bottom of it. Owen, the man Chris had trusted, finally came clean. He admitted to Chris that he had been in the illegal arms trade for some time. But what really set Chris's alarm bells ringing was Owen's plan to take over the oil refinery. Owen revealed that his real motive was to sabotage the entire operation, sell it to the highest bidder, and make a fortune. The betrayal hit Chris like a ton of bricks. He was a man of honor, and he wanted no part of it. He immediately quit the mission and urged Henry to come with him. But Henry, a man with a lot on his mind, told him to beat it. He hadn't been paid yet, and he wasn't about to walk away empty-handed. Not long after Chris left, Owen ruthlessly shot and killed Henry and some of his men. In a shocking twist, 2 of Henry's men, Knox and Morgan, turned on him, revealing they had been on Owen's payroll the whole time. Meanwhile, Luo, the commander with a gut feeling that something was wrong, had been following Chris. He knew in his heart that Chris was involved in the whole operation. Upon arrival, Luo confronted Chris, telling him his missing people. But Chris, trying to hide what his brother had done, decided to keep his mouth shut and said he didn't know anything. He just left, but Luo wasn't buying it. He kept following the man secretly. Chris returned to his secret hideout to get his money, only to find Henry's lifeless body on the floor. He was devastated, but before he could process his brother's death, Luo appeared. Chris immediately blamed Luo for Henry's death, but Luo denied it. The 2 men, a human tank and a master of kung fu, faced off in a brutal, no-holds-barred fight. Chris used his brute strength to his advantage, but Luo was a force of nature, using his lightning-fast speed and agility to match Chris blow for blow. Just as their fight was reaching a boiling point, a group of militiamen showed up, ready to collect their weapons from Henry. But before they could get what they came for, Chris and Luo accidentally set off a grenade, sending the militiamen running for cover. The militiamen, enraged, returned fire, trapping Chris and Luo in the hideout. With no other choice, they decided to team up and fight their way out. After the dust settled, the 2 men made a truce. They were at a major crossroads, and they knew they had to find the truth about Henry's death and the hostages. They decided to work together to find the real killer and get to the bottom of the conspiracy. Meanwhile, back at the oil refinery, Owen was ready to get down to business. He had Professor Chang cornered and demanded the code to activate the massive oil transfer. When Chang refused to give up the code, Owen began to execute the hostages one by one, a cold, calculated move to get what he wanted. Chang, a woman of integrity, held her ground, but her resolve broke when Owen put a gun to the head of the last hostage, Chang's own son. With no other choice, Chang gave in, a look of despair on her face. She revealed that the access code was on a USB drive in a bag held by May. Chang's son then told Owen's men that they could find the bag by tracking May's phone. Back in Chris's village after taking Luo and May there, Chris and Luo had a heart-to-heart. Chris showed Luo the simple life he had found with the orphans, a life of peace and a world away from the violence they were used to. As they were sitting down, Chris told Luo how beautiful and amazing he found May. A smile crept across Luo's face as Chris suddenly realized that Luo was a father. Just as the moment was settling in, the dogs began to bark, a signal that intruders were on the premises. It was Owen's men who had tracked May's phone to the village. Chris and Luo immediately went into action, working together to take down the men. They split up, and Chris made a mad dash for a watchtower, but a sniper shot hit the structure, sending it toppling over. Fortunately, he was safe. Just when they thought the coast was clear, Knox and his men showed up and surrounded them. The villagers, brave and loyal to Chris, came out to defend their home, but Chris couldn't bear the thought of more bloodshed. He gave up May's bag to Knox, and Owen's men left. The next morning, May showed up and told Chris that the bag contained a USB with the code to unlock the oil flow from the refinery, which held millions of barrels of oil. With the truth now out in the open, Chris and Luo knew they were in a race against time. They got in a truck and thus sped toward the refinery to stop Owen's plan. May, feeling left out and ignored, secretly followed them in Chris's prized blue car. Meanwhile, Owen's tanker ship was already docked. Owen ordered Chang to open the flow, but it would take 24 hours to transfer all of it. Shortly after, Chris and Luo came in like a freight train, taking down Owen's men one by one. Seeing that his plan was being thwarted, Owen made a run for it, leaving Knox behind to guard Chang and finish the job. Chris and Luo burst into the control room, ready for a showdown. Standing in their way was Knox, a highly skilled martial artist who was a force to be reckoned with. Luo, knowing they were on a tight schedule, told Chris to beat it and go after Owen while he held off Knox. But Chris was too late. Owen had already gotten away in 3 oil trucks. Luckily, May showed up just in the nick of time in Chris's prized blue car. Seeing the situation, Chris told May to go after Owen, who was running on borrowed time. Meanwhile, Luo and Knox were locked in an all-out battle. In a stroke of genius, Luo grabbed a soap spray and used it to turn the room into a slippery, bubbly mess. The fight continued, a brilliant display of Luo's signature Jackie Chan-style combat, a mix of comedic and jaw-dropping martial arts combat. He eventually managed to take down Knox, but he knew he was out of time. On the road, May and Chris were in a high-speed chase. Their little blue car wasn't built for the rough terrain, and they soon crashed. Just as they thought it was over, Luo came in like a freight train, a jet-powered truck in tow. They all jumped in and continued the pursuit. They were at a major disadvantage, so Chris activated the truck's jet engine, rocketing them forward. They finally caught up, and in a wild move, Luo rammed the truck into Owen's oil tanker, causing a massive explosion that sent the 3 trucks flipping end over end. Morgan was killed instantly, and Owen's face was covered in severe burns. He fled in his car. Luo rammed his truck into Owen's car, and they both went skidding toward a massive ravine. At the last possible second, Luo tied May's seat, and they hung for their life on the edge of the gaping ravine, and they barely escaped a fiery death. Fortunately, they could descend to the side of the cliff. Owen, on the other hand, his luck had run out, slipped and fallen into the abyss below. Luo and May, still dazed and confused, thought Chris had fallen with the truck, but he appeared moments later, climbing the cliff, safe and sound, although covered in scratches. The 3 of them were now trapped on the side of the cliff, and all they could do was yell for help. In the end, they were somehow rescued, and the film cuts to Chris and Luo working together to fix the well in Chris's village. The villagers were overjoyed, and the children were once again able to play in the clean water. Just as the 2 were basking in the glow of their success, a member of Luo's team approached them with a new mission. Luo decided to invite Chris for the mission, and without a moment's hesitation, Chris accepted, and the film ends with the 2 heroes united as a team.